Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly, Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30.
Welcome, members. In the meeting room today, along with myself, we have Trevor Lunn, and members joining us remotely are Emma Sheeran, Alex Easton and Pat Sheehan. This meeting will be recorded and broadcast throughout Parliament buildings and online. Members are welcome to use your mobile devices as long as they're in airplane mode. And if members are content to proceed through the agenda, I will go to item number 1. We have received apologies from John Stewart. Are members aware of any other apologies? No. In order to...
Chair, sorry, can I just give Padraig's apologies? The ministerial team are in Derry today and he's taken part in some engagements, and that's why he's not there.
That's great. Thank you, Emma, for that. Okay, so I'm going to go straight to item number 5, the refugee integration strategy, and we are going to have an oral briefing this afternoon from a range of stakeholders. Can I refer members to pages 18 to 88 of the meeting pack for the relevant papers? And can I welcome to the meeting this afternoon Mrs. Bernadette McAliskey, Chief Executive of South Tyrone Empowerment Programme, representing Stronger Together; Ms. Lilian Seenoi-Barr, Director of Programmes, North West Migrants Forum; Ms. Catherine Barr, the Women's Centre Derry; Ms. Breidge McPherson, BAME Advocacy Project Worker at the Women's Centre in Derry. We have also Ms. Anne-Marie White, Refugee Support Operations Manager, British Red Cross, and Ms. Coumilah Manjoo from the Community Liaison Officer, Belfast Multicultural Association. This session is not being recorded by Hansard, but there will be a video of the meeting available on the committee webpage. The committee is aware that there are other organisations supporting refugees and seeking or helping asylum seekers. But time restraints mean that a limited number of organisations could be invited here today. The committee hopes to engage more widely towards the end of the consultation period. Members, if what we're going to do today is we're going to go to each of your organisations in a sequence. So first we're going to invite Bernadette to brief members, and then we're going to invite Lilian and Breidge and Catherine, then Anne-Marie, and then Coumilah, and then we're going to go into a question and answer session. I think it'll be more productive to hear everybody before, rather than breaking down into organisations, because I think that there will be a familiar theme going through all of the presentations and all of the voices that we hear today. And can I welcome you all today, and looking forward to hearing your reflections on the draft strategy, and hopefully this engagement today will better inform us as committee members what further requests that we can make from the department in order to make the strategy as robust and responsive as possible. Okay, Bernadette, you're very welcome, and you can kick it off. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. If I might first do two things, make an apology that before the change of order of business, I already had arranged another Zoom meeting. So I will be depending on my good colleagues and allies to pick up the discussion and question and answer. Because I won't actually be in the meeting at that time, so apologies for that. And secondly, I think as I have set out a draft briefing that Stronger Together will make that publicly available and circulate that through our e-alert once today's business is over. So for best use of time, I'm not going to go into the detail of that briefing. I think now that the draft strategy has been published, one of the things that I would like to do, and reference has already been made to a wider circle of people working within this field than are able to be here today. And I would particularly like to acknowledge the long period of work done by the Refugee and Asylum Forum in working up a strategy over what now must seem like 2 years, and went back to a lot of work under the leadership of the Racial Equality Unit with Ken Fraser. And it is good to see that work finally coming to fruition in the publication of the draft strategy. The key thing that I did want to acknowledge as I speak for Stronger Together, which is a wide network. We have 360 members across the north, made up of individuals, small groups and larger organisations right across the north working in the field of racial equality. It is an interethnic and a cross-sectoral network. So we have people working in the statutory sector, the voluntary sector, and one or two in the private sector, all with a shared vision of racial equality. The second point I'd like to emphasise is that while we speak of integration of refugees and we use the term refugee widely, the starting point and context of our work is within the immigration strategy. And while we recognise that that is a non-devolved matter, it is imperative that the Executive and Assembly recognise their role as influencers and entitled to impact on and make recommendations on what that strategy should look like. And it's very difficult to devise a comprehensive and supportive human rights-based integration strategy in the context of a hostile immigration plan. And I think that's a key strategic point that needs to be recognised. We welcome the appearance of the draft strategy and particularly the key activities within the 4 high outcomes identified. But it is insufficient, in our view, to continue turning out framework documents and calling them strategies. A strategy, when completed, and we have a racial equality strategy again in which this is based, but a strategy requires the framework, the key actions, the time-based action plans, the indicators that will keep us right in measuring how we are going to success, and the time frame in which that will happen. It also needs to be accompanied by a budget, a mainstream budgeted resource, both in cash and kind and services that will assist in the implementation of that strategy. And we do not have it in this draft strategy. We don't have it in the existing racial equality strategy either. And we need to move on from aspirational frameworks to time-framed budgeted, resourced, and when I say budgeted, I mean mainstream departmental budgets. So I think from a broad perspective, those are the key points that I would make. A number of specific points I'd make for all of our members is that a Belfast-centric refugee plan is problematic. It's problematic for people working in the field in Belfast. It's problematic in terms of accommodation and support mechanisms, and it's specifically problematic for the broad population of refugees and asylum seekers. The second key point I'd make, and I know that people will follow these up in great detail, the second point that I would make is that we cannot have a refugee strategy that starts at the point of granting formal refugee status somewhere outside the country. And this is where we are with the Syrian refugee programme, which is a good programme of good practice to be widened and built on. But Syrian refugees come into the country with refugee status granted. And the majority of refugees, asylum seekers, those seeking refuge coming into Northern Ireland, are undocumented at the point of arrival. And therefore their needs are more basic, more immediate at every level. And we need to not have a three-tiered refugee integration strategy. One for people who come with status, one for people who apply for status at the point of arrival, and one for people who live underneath the radar until crisis, destitution or something else pushes them into the front line and they need to seek status. Those are the key points I think that I would want to make on behalf of our members. There are a wide range of people doing a wide range of work, but we find that the key areas are within those who come with status and do not have equality of access or pathway to integration. Highly qualified people, ranging to people with little education. The loss of the skill, expertise and lived experience of that population is our loss and their pain. So I won't dwell any further because I know my colleagues here who can speak with lived experience from all of those points and others who can speak with the experience of service providers. And the reality is that without a coherent integration strategy, the lived experience of refugees, whatever their status and point of arrival, is one of insustainability, perpetual fear, precarious living, and the daily fear of destitution. And that is a stain on the character of a community that has itself emerged from war, that is trying to build peace, and that understands itself. People left this country to avoid war and secured refuge in other places. And many of us who stayed here, including myself, paid the price of not fleeing. So we need, as we move forward, to build the new society envisaged in the Good Friday Agreement and in the New Start. We really need to recognise that we have a duty to those who arrive on our shores with an entitlement, an expectation of our humanity. And I would like to see our strategy doing more than wishful thinking. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Bernadette, for that. And that was very clear, and your paper was also very clear. What we really want, the intention of engagement with the stakeholders, is to ensure that we don't have an aspirational strategy that doesn't have the robustness of the framework and the time frames and the money around it in order to deliver on it, because, you know, it will just be a document on paper, and in life it won't deliver for those that we need it to deliver for. Can I now invite Lilian Seenoi-Barr from the North West Migrants Forum into the spotlight?
I don't know if you can hear me. I think I have a problem with the signal here. Can you guys hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you, Lilian. There's a wee bit of a freeze in your picture, but we can hear you perfectly.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, members, and thank you for the opportunity to address this committee on this pivotal issue of the refugee integration strategy. The publication of the draft strategy finally is welcome. However, I have to say I have some very many concerns about this document. Reading the document at times feels as if the Executive Office is shrugging its shoulders. This document fails to mention, let alone address, the elephant in the room, the hostile environment policy, which underpins the experience of every single refugee and asylum seeker in the north of Ireland. Failure to address this key issue does not lead to confidence in the depth and substance of this document. I listened to the presentation from TO officials earlier who said that this strategy has been updated to reflect the current landscape. However, there is no mention of the impact of COVID of Brexit, nor does it recognize that many support systems were paused, or does it recognize that uptake in what the government has termed irregular routes to Northern Ireland. So this is clearly not the case. It might be helpful if I give you a short history of how we got here where we are now. We started this process in 2015. The production of a refugee integration strategy is a commitment made under the racial equality strategy. But the work only began against the backdrop of the Syrian refugee crisis. The first and deputy first minister had a great vision, and they made a commitment. The executive engaged with refugees and asylum seekers in 2016. I was one of them, and commissioned very insightful research into refugee experience and challenges, which is still available on the Executive Office website. There is a lot of existing knowledge and expertise, in particular among refugees and asylum seekers, that is the draft should have included. In the 6 years since 2015, I have gone from being an asylum seeker to a refugee to a citizen. Now, in 2021, the big news story is Afghanistan and the so-called crisis of channel crossings. I would hate to think that our concerns for refugees is dependent on the headlines. We should be responsive, not reactive, because this is an issue that is not going away. There will be more Syrians, more Afghans, more Sudanese, more Eritreans seeking protection and not necessarily coming through the global resettlement scheme. We know that we have hundreds who arrive here on a weekly basis. And if we truly want to live up to the reputation of a welcoming society, we need practical, holistic, and rights-based measures to provide for and integrate people seeking protection. This draft does not even provide a single one measurable protection process that we can use. A strategy, as Bernadette has clearly put down for us, is a roadmap, a detailed outline of how to get from here to there. There being refugees valued, safe, respected, and able to meet their full potential, not a vague suggestion. We can never get to there if we haven't honestly reckoned with where we are here. Here is fear, racism, sectarianism, trauma, and a deliberately hostile environment. We know, for example, that Syrian refugees who are often presented as a Northern Irish success story, many have been settled, but they are certainly neither safe nor fully integrated. Many feel left behind, and I hope I will have time to share one of the Syrian stories of a family here in Derry. This strategy presents 4 wonderful sounding high-level outcomes to be achieved in only 5 years. Remember, it has taken over 6 years to just come up with this draft. We have already seen this pattern in the racial equality strategy. 16 years on much of it has not been done, nothing has been implemented, and the lack of clear goals and timelines contributed to this. We also believe these outcomes provided in this draft are unrealistic. For example, the strategy talks about giving people seeking protection the chance to fulfill their potential. To do that, we need to know exactly what the barriers and obstacles are and to put in place very practical measures, including to access education and employment. We know many of the barriers, well documented. Asylum seekers are prevented from working. They struggle to survive on £37 a week and often have to make difficult decisions, such as choosing between eating or bus fare to school. Some of the barriers are outlined on page 24 of the draft strategy. The 2 case studies provided clearly outlines the impact of the hostile environment policy, but it's presented as an example of achieving strategic outcomes. We should be ashamed of ourselves that someone seeking protection is allowed to go into destitution for over 7 years in Ireland. The barriers and obstacles are not reflected in this document. Integration is a two-way street. For example, to feel safe and secure, we need to acknowledge deeply ingrained racism, including the links between racism and sectarianism, and adopt concrete and realistic actions that recognize overcoming prejudice is a long-term, daily process for all institutions and organizations in our society. On page 35 of this draft document, the issue of racism is presented as an issue that the PHNI should be dealing with. In fact, the text in that document is like a PSNI advertisement. Without a proper action plan, with timelines, accountability mechanisms, and resources, the high-level outcome just read like motherhood and apple pie, all style but no substance at all. The strategy should also be an ongoing process, not just a piece of paper. Not only should have refugees and asylum seekers been properly consulted before the publication of this draft, once any strategy is approved, it should also include them in monitoring and evaluating its implementation. We do not want to be back here again in 10 years. And I fear that is exactly what will happen if we do not take real action right now. There is best practice in other countries for inclusive mechanism that Northern Ireland could learn from to provide for meaningful co-production as equals, not as passive recipient. There are many more points that I would like to raise that perhaps we could discuss in our during the discussion, including around family unification and the gaps, huge gaps left in our support for refugees now that we are no longer covered by the Dublin Convention. But I would like to close with a challenge for you as elected representatives. All of you across the political spectrum know that Northern Ireland is a special place. There are issues important to you that are not devolved matters, because we are always told immigration is a devolved matter. But some of you have lobbied and campaigned for the review of reforms, most notably the trade and the protocol. The draft strategy talks about engaging with the Home Office and the UK government, but we need more than engagement. To fulfill the promise of respect, integration, and allowing refugees and asylum seekers to meet their full potential, we need you to be our advocates to show political will and commitment to be activists for the rights of people seeking protection. As someone with lived experiences, someone who always supports people every single day who requires help to navigate this very complex system, I would urge you to listen. Really listen directly to our communities, not filtered information through officials or organizations directly involved in delivering schemes. Refugee and asylum seekers' voices need to be heard directly. But we also need you to hold officials accountable. When a document like this is presented to you 6 years since the first draft, you must demand answers that you can stand over. I will leave it there and hope we will have time to discuss more.
Thank you very much, Lilian. And I see the emergent themes coming. You want the plan to be more robust and certainly, you know, key actions and milestones and indicators and budgets and all of that around it. And we will be passing this over to the department. So can I bring into the spotlight Catherine Barr and Breidge McPherson from the Women's Centre Derry?
Hello, committee. Yes, thank you for welcoming us, and Catherine will speak first.
So I'm just going to give an overview of the work that our organisation has been doing and some of the things that we've been coming up against working with refugee families. So Women's Centre Derry is a safe and welcoming environment supporting women to achieve their full potential. We work in a person-centred, culturally aware way. We provide childcare facilities for children up to the age of 4. The Women's Sector receives small funding under the Fundable Relocation Scheme to provide 4 hours of English to the women and childcare services for the children so that the women can engage in courses. We have got some success stories of delivering. We have good practice. We have women who have joined employment, volunteering, completed qualifications, went to the college or doing access diplomas. We have got youngsters who have achieved their A levels and have went off to university. So there has been a lot of good practice, but a lot of the people that are coming through the refugee strategy have complex needs and there is a lot of gaps on the services. And we find that we have been working to try and fill these gaps, especially over COVID. We found that there was a lack of resources that these families could avail of. And through the relocation scheme, there's an umbrella of services that is available in Belfast, which is not available any longer in Derry. So we had to go on the hunt to try and find funding to fill these gaps and to support these children during COVID. We were very lucky that we were able to secure Children in Need funding, which was able to enable us to give clothing, support to access healthcare, schooling, helping to fill out school uniform grants, applying for school meals, applying to support parents to apply for nursery places, school places, support girls and the all-girl schools, to support youth into employment, to support university students to apply for accommodation, to help them to navigate the finance system, make the calls to ensure that they were able to get their finance grants to go to university, providing English courses and after school to the children to support them with their education, and also to provide integration activities for these children. There is no fund that is after this year, and our concern is where is filling these gaps for these families when the service is no longer there. On arrival through the scheme at the beginning, there was extern here in Derry. Now families had key workers, which were a great success, and there was great feedback from the families of the work that the key workers had done with extern. But the key workers were only for 12 to 24 months. This is not long enough for the families. Families have said that a woman has told us that they don't remember the first 2 years of her child's life when she came here, which tells us that there was a lot of culture shock and there is trauma which is coming appearing for these families, and there's no support for trauma or no support with their mental health. We also know that the Law Centre is also based in Belfast, and we have found ourselves again trying to fill the gaps with the families and trying to support them to access the Life in the UK test, to support with visa applications, indefinite leave to remain, citizenships, which is costing the families £1,300 per person, while some are living on benefits with welfare cuts and increasing electricity and gas prices. How are these families supposed to afford these costs? The biometrics, which have been hard for them to access, delays in accessing processing results in the family's benefits being cut because their biometrics wasn't completed, and we again were trying to support those families and making them phone calls and trying to get benefits set up in place for them. Last week, Pat Sheehan had suggested that it would be an idea to place a key focus on the most vulnerable refugees on the report. I agree that key groups should be factored into the strategy to support these families which have complex needs. I also feel that women's centres, disability groups, youth groups, etc. should all be part of the long-term support strategy and funding streams that also need to follow the support services that are being provided to the refugee families. As women's centres are unique, safe and welcoming spaces with access to childcare, it has enabled us to engage with children and identify additional needs and provide early intervention, enabling support service to give the children the best possible start to reach their full potential. We are aware that 50% of the women and families that were located in Derry have relocated to Armagh, Lisburn and Belfast. Some families that remain in Derry have expressed interest of relocating to Scotland and England due to a lack of long-term support, poor housing and a lack of employment issues in Derry. We feel that these issues are huge and should not be happening, and these families need support, and long-term support needs to be put in place under the relocation scheme and the strategy to support refugees that are coming to our town. Breidge works closely with the families on a day-to-day basis, and she's just going to give you an overview on the work that she is doing with them.
Okay, Sinead, shall I just go ahead?
Yeah, go ahead, Breidge.
Okay, well, hello to everybody. Hello to Lilian and Bernadette and everybody else at the committee, and thanks very much for inviting us. My name's Breidge McPherson, and I'm a project worker who works closely with the Syrian women and children and families, extended families. And so therefore I would have contact with the families every day of the week. The women come here, as Catherine said, to do their English classes, but they're also very much involved in other programs within the Women's Centre, like the Multicultural Women's Group, like our English for Work programme, like our Essential Skills programmes. So this is key to everything, because they come here to a space, free childcare on site, and can begin to make their journey back into education and some sense of grounding and integration within the community. But just during the week, to prepare for this meeting, it's not that often we get to meet the executive committee, and we want to try and make our point strongly on behalf of the families. I spoke to 10 different refugee families in Derry in small focus groups to get their views and opinions and ideas of what has been happening. So I'm going to try and tell you now what they have said to me in the last week about what has happened to them since they came to Derry. Okay, so number one, the challenges that the group faced coming to Northern Ireland. Welcoming families has not been given due care and attention. Poor standards of welcoming families into empty houses with old bedding, no cutlery, blankets described by one woman with 2 small children as being thin grey blankets with holes like prison blankets, and a stained mattress. That was her, it was the first time her heart sank since she left Lebanon, having come from Syria. She had a baby in her arms, you know. It was quite distressing, obviously. Okay, the houses here are temporary, they're private, they're old stock, they're poor condition and disrepair. The communication between the families and the NIHE is totally inadequate. There are no attempts during the pandemic by the housing authorities to support the families in any meaningful way. And the executive do not attend our local civic forum where the Syrian refugee families. We host a civic forum here with the council and local groups. The housing executive just don't come. Okay, so the families remain 5 years later in homeless accommodation with no access to the housing executive. Apparently the group that deals with the VPRS housing are based in Belfast, and they're very inaccessible. I can vouch for that because I've tried. They don't come to the forum. The families on arrival didn't know Northern Ireland, and they were located at random. So, for instance, one family found themselves having spent 10 days in Belfast on the bus to Derry, separated from all their other families. They asked the busman what Derry was like, and he told them, it was a good place. But in fact, they came to a very poor property. So, okay. So some families have on their housing form selected a place for housing that they've never been there, and they don't know where it is either. So that's a big issue. And the point system, they feel that their points haven't been allocated fairly. It felt like there had been a blanket points given to everybody, and that the individual families hadn't really been considered well. That's how the families feel. I can just give you an example. Got a call from a family on the 17th. This is 5 years down the line, of course. So they show me a video where the roof of their bathroom had fallen off, and the bathroom floor had been pulled up by the landlord and had been lying like that for the last 2 months. And as you would know, it's freezing cold now, and the house is old, and the family were cold. There are 4 children in that house. Other families the houses are all old stock, tiny little houses with no gardens. A house that I regularly do a home visit to for the welfare of the children. The boiler is broken, and they have to keep running up the stairs to press the button, and so therefore it heats up and cools down very quickly. And not only is the gas prices increasing, but it's costing them an absolute fortune just because the boiler's broke. The landlord would come to fix, and just like a stick and plaster, it really needs a new boiler, or they need a permanent property. It's a terrible condition. The house is damp. It's got mould. There's 2 children trying to go to school and that. So I know I'm taking a great bit of time. I'll quickly go through the rest now. The benefit system, due to the lack of face-to-face services over COVID and language barriers presented by the telephone, our online chat facilities, the whole benefit system has fraught with difficulty. Benefits and advice services are communicated to the family in English. Some of the families don't understand the letters. They miscalculate and don't see important dates, and appointments are missed, and then they're counted as DNA and just wiped off whatever waiting list they're on. Phone line staff often speak too quickly or give incorrect information, and the families are just left without anything. Waiting times on the phone can be long and costly, and the families wouldn't have money for data. Just try to help a young Syrian refugee woman during the week. She had childborn in September. She was told that the waiting time for child benefit would be 26 weeks, so she wouldn't get the child benefit till next April. Her husband recently had to leave his job in a warehouse up the country somewhere because of racism. And so there was no money coming into the house because they left the job because he couldn't stick it any longer because of the atmosphere within the place. As you can imagine, that's just a very, very difficult situation. So Women's Centre have continued to support the families with care packages, private donations of clothes, technology, and the Women's Centre engage with the families every single day. We do home visits even during the pandemic, I still did home visits because the families were utterly isolated. And the children expected to study remotely with maybe one device in the family. I was told by the Education Authority they were all given a device each family when they come, but that was 5 years ago. As you can understand, that was just totally inadequate for the family. So in terms of education, nursery, primary, secondary school, not enough or no extra English within the schools. Parents unable to help the children as they can't speak English themselves. Parents-teachers meetings with no interpreters present. The children, no extra support in school and no adequate support at home. The homework just doesn't get done. Maybe some wee children rhyming off words just because they've learnt it and they're smart, but they don't actually understand what they're saying. Culturally inappropriate homeworks coming home, and as you can imagine, now Christmas, a lot of wee nativity homeworks and all, mums, while they want to integrate and be seen to be integrated, those homeworks are not appropriate for those children, and they just that the same thing happened over COVID. Literally, the homework pages and pages of culturally inappropriate stuff. It's pointed out that some of the families wouldn't be literate in their own language, so that if you were really looking at a strategy of refugee integration, you should be talking about language classes and Arabic and all the other languages. So a recent experience I had has shown us that the students are ill prepared for going away to uni. A recent student I helped going to UK for university was no student finance in place, no student accommodation not arranged. He landed up at the university and they didn't have a place for him. They sent him home again. None of the information seems to be addressed at school. So as you can imagine, that's quite extraordinary, really. So the family had to pay for hotel for the night and get him back again. Employment, inadequate or no access to employment, skills, apprenticeships, support, employment schemes. All the families talking about going away to Scotland and England because of this. And as Catherine said, a lot of the families have already left Northwest and gone to Armagh, Belfast, Lisburn. And I know I've taken a long time, just wrap up now quickly by telling you that in terms of access to health, there are many barriers. Accessing primary care with the development of telephone triage is a nightmare for the families, even if they have good language. They can't, probably some of you like myself, can't work your way through the push for prescriptions, push this, push that, push between 9 and 11 in the morning. The families are totally lost within that system. Physical and mental health of traumatised people with no access to talking therapies in their own language. My experience is that the families, as Catherine said, suffered such cultural shock when they first arrived that it's really only now that they're beginning to realise the absolute nightmare that they've been living. I know of many people who are presently displaying the signs of post-traumatic stress disorder, and if you heard the story, you would know why. So that's a bit difficult, and a big thing for me, because I in the past was a midwife, and I was quite extraordinary to find that although the Public Health Authority have translated documents, not all the COVID documentation was translated, so the families were lost in the up-to-date regulations of COVID. That just never happened. There's a gaping hole there in terms of the BPRS and their definition as complex needs of medical and more. But one of the amazing things was for the Public Health Authority is that the obstetric and gynecological documents, very little of it is translated, and so many of the young women have had babies since they come here, and there are huge barriers to accessing obstetric care. And the pregnancy book, which is on the PHA website, is in English only. all the letters from welfare, health and all come home in English. Nobody understands them. We wait till they come to the Women's Centre, and it could be a week or two after the appointment was supposed to happen. So we agree saying in terms of what we see, we're only respectfully suggesting that there needs to be tackling of prejudicial attitudes, racism and hate crime, ensuring equality of opportunity in education, employment, accommodation, healthcare and social welfare, ensuring effective monitoring and evaluation supported by data collection, reformation of the law to address key shortfalls in legal protections, equality, the Equality Commissioner stated to the NI Affairs that we are living in the dark ages, and surely we are. We need increased access to ministers. We need support ethnic minorities to enter public life, and we need quickly and urgently hate crime legislation.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Breidge and Catherine. You have given an awful lot of practical examples of the interventions that are required for people living on the ground in real communities and where the gaps might possibly be. And I suppose you're confirming what Bernadette said from the outset about, a very Belfast-centric provision of services, and how that doesn't actually filter through to the real life experiences of Syrian refugees that are living in other areas outside of Belfast, and particularly obviously from your own experience in Derry. Can I now bring Anne-Marie White into the spotlight? Anne-Marie is from the Refuge Support Operations and she's the manager within British Red Cross. Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you very much to Bernadette, Lilian, Breidge and Catherine. It's really interesting to hear insights from your experiences, particularly in Derry. As part of this short sort of briefing, I'd like to go to talk a little bit around, to acknowledge some of the keynote areas in the draft integration strategy. I'd also like to give a bit of an overview on the asylum process and the current context that is in Belfast, and also throughout this to reference the new Scots integration strategy and some learning from that as well. We've mentioned a little bit earlier on just around the length of time it has taken to get this draft integration strategy to where it is now, and we welcome that. We welcomed the launch last week. We look back to 2011 when the first meeting was convened with the SNP to explore refugee integration. We look at the 2017 report that was commissioned on refugee and asylum seeker experience, which was very helpful at the time, but actually a lot has happened in the refugee and asylum forum since that time. Resettlement, increase in family reunification, to name but a few. Also in 2019, we had the Home Office Indicators of Integration, and that framework on which we can now look to measure integration. And it's good to see this referenced in this draft report, but I think there's more of a position that we could look in monitoring the outcomes of a draft strategy and measuring the outcomes of integration based upon those Home Office indicators, particularly looking at social connections. Again, we had the Innovation Lab gathering those experiences getting to 2020, and there will be an evaluation of Syrian BPRS as well, that first draft of that evaluation process for the programme. I guess looking at the racial equality strategies underpinning everything, linking in with TBUC and also the programme for government. Within that, I think it's important to note that there's been a few comments around a hostile environment. I think it'd be remiss of me not to talk about or to mention the pending Nationality and Borders Bill and the new plan for immigration and the impacts, the negative impacts this will have on refugee integration. And I think that's probably for another session, but just to mention that at this stage, and I think that's where we could look at a much more difficult and challenging environment for people coming through the asylum process in particular. This draft integration plan does acknowledge that the beneficiaries, refugees and asylum seekers, are at the heart of this integration strategy. But good to have that more defined, particularly around that co-production piece and the lived experience. What's interesting in this draft strategy is it mentions the positive impact on the wider community of the benefits of belonging. And I think that's a really important piece for us to consider when we are looking at refugee integration and that wider impact on the wider community. I think we talked a little bit before, I think Bernadette spoke before around this framework and having accountability, and I completely agree with this. With this particular draft, it talks about a framework on coordinating the efforts of all the bodies involved in supporting refugees and asylum seekers to maximise the impact, to make most use of the best resources available. I think we need to note that the resources currently are very limited for organisations that are supporting refugees and asylum seekers. We tend to have very short-term funding, and that makes it very, very difficult to plan a long-term integration piece and also to measure the impact of that long-term integration. I think it's important to stress the resourcing for this strategy. If we look back to the New Scots and the first sort of version of the New Scots integration policy, there's quite a bit of criticism because there wasn't any resourcing to go with this strategy. And now, within the New Scots, there is a £2.8 million funding package through AMIF, and that's a grant scheme, specifically for programmes to support integration. And I think we greatly welcome having such a resource attached to any strategy for refugee integration. The strategy itself, or any strategy, in particular this draft and the next permeation of that, is a very useful space for mobilising discussions on the interplay between devolved and reserved legislation and ensuring that everyone in a devolved space receives a supportive policy landscape. So our policy needs to also change if we are going to have an effective refugee integration strategy. Nothing is sitting or acts independently. In particular, we also need strong leadership to really lead on this integration strategy. I think there's a conversation also around the steps to ensure that delivery and monitoring of the strategy. This draft talks about this being taken forward as a partnership approach and monitoring and evaluation over 5 years with yearly reports against the implementations. It talks about regular updates from departments who will develop their own detailed plans for implementation. Be good to hear a lot more about that and which departments are going to be developing plans, how they will be measured. But most importantly is to ensure that the delivery of these plans that are developed by the departments are not just process monitored, they're also impact and outcome evidence. So another example from the New Scots is the interplay between the strategy and everyday impacts. And evidence is very key to really measuring that impact. So whatever body of work is coming out of the integration strategy, we need to ensure that we have evidence on the impact to measure just how effective this is. But it isn't just a strategy that's a piece of paper or an aspiration. There's actually measurable outcomes, and those outcomes are linked to the impact that has on an individual as an asylum seeker or refugee, but also on the wider community as well, and potentially how that impacts or influences other policies that create an easier environment on which to operate and to deliver refugee integration really effectively. I guess in the New Scots policy as well, there's a great onus on an evidence group with people with lived experience, and that's been spoken about from Lilian and from Bernadette earlier on. We can't stress how important that lived experience and having a safe place for people to be able to influence, to review, and to continually assess the development and delivery of any works that are coming out of an integration strategy. I think we've talked a little bit earlier on. I think Bernadette, Lilian and Breidge and Catherine have spoken about the impact of COVID. And whereas in this draft plan, it does acknowledge that actions to deliver outcomes may change and develop as work progresses or circumstances change, I think it's important to almost build in the fact that we are still living within COVID-19's restrictions. There are massive changes to how we access our services, and Breidge spoke about this quite clearly about accessing primary care. And I think if we are going to look at an effective integration strategy, we need to take into account accessing all those services, and not just at times when everything is front-facing, but also looking at how this is flexible and adept to changing to times or pandemics. And I think emerging needs and issues will keep continuing throughout the time of any strategy. It'd be good to have a bit more detail on how this would work and the accountability structure, which has been spoken about before as well. Where is the accountability structure in any strategy and within the executive office as well? Named people, named accountabilities within each government department. I guess in the new Scots integration strategy, there was a progress report from 2018 to 22, and that was reporting on the achievements and challenges, and also all the actions that are prioritised by the new Scots partners, and they were informed by lived experiences of refugees and asylum seeker communities. It's really important to ensure that whilst this draft does speak about co-production and lived experience, we need to have more detail and resource as to how that will be done continually and what space there will be to keep informing. When we look at the refugee asylum context in Northern Ireland, often the integration journey of somebody who's a refugee or an asylum seeker, as Bernadette mentioned, of arriving with different immigration status, can really impact the sense of belonging and ability to integrate. I think there is an acknowledgement that the impact of asylum process on long-term physical and mental health on that journey to integrate is really challenging when people are in asylum systems for a long time. And the reality, as we've heard from Breidge earlier, of refugees accessing services can be quite challenging. There's an opportunity to link this strategy to mental health strategy and the regional trauma network. So it's not just a standalone, but it influences and is informed by other strategies and policies. In Northern Ireland, we have a range of people who would fit under refugee and asylum seekers in terms of this strategy. We have cohorts of people who come in as asylum seekers, and obviously with insecure status. And post-Brexit, we're also seeing that people's claims initially are being deemed inadmissible if they travel through a safe or a third country, and maybe have to wait 6 months till the Home Office has gone back to that safe country to see if they will be accepting that person back or returning. There's no agreement post-Brexit. So this often means that someone's claim doesn't really get considered until that process is underway. So somebody will be in asylum support, but their case won't actually be active. We have asylum seekers who, across the UK, there's been an increase in the waiting time for initial decisions, and cases waiting longer than 6 months. So it was up 23% in the last year of cases that are waiting for their initial decisions. That's a really difficult time, an unstable time for people as asylum seekers. So when we think about long-term integration, we think about the integration strategy, we need to consider all the range of people who it's not one homogenous group of being an asylum seeker or refugees. We also have people who are young people who've come as unaccompanied. We have, unfortunately, people who are refused asylum seekers. So they may be completely destitute or may be through in and out of asylum support while further submissions and legal representation. And in this draft strategy, it does talk about destitution and a pathway out of destitution. This really needs to be more clearly defined and the policy content of that, because it is quite a large statement to make. Within the refugee asylum context, we also have reunited families who have come through, somebody's come through an asylum process, have their refugee status, and through the family reunion policy can bring their wife or spouse and their children under 18 to Northern Ireland or to the UK. And I guess we've talked quite a bit around resettlement, and that's what Breidge and Catherine spoke mainly about. And again, every facet of that immigration status is very different. And I think refugee integration plan needs to reflect and speak to all the needs of everybody that may be included in that group. The refugee integration journey is very different. So we need to ensure that policies and practice don't exacerbate or unintentionally increase vulnerabilities of one group while focusing on another group within our refugee integration strategy. In the asylum intake in Northern Ireland is quite unique. We have a single cell unit in Northern Ireland, so we're not a dispersal area. So anybody that comes into Northern Ireland will have their claim for asylum assessed here, and all the asylum accommodation currently is in Belfast. I think it's really important to note that we have seen a massive increase in asylum intake since May of this year. And this was after this draft integration strategy was formulated. I think it's important to, when we provide our feedback on the consultation, to take into note that there has been a massive increase. Furthermore, we now have many contingency hotels, which basically means that people are staying in hotels before they can be moved into their accommodation because of the lack of accommodation at the moment, because of the high influx. And I think, again, we need to recognise that this is a very difficult time for people to enter into their integration journey. The ministerial forward on the draft integration strategy talks about the importance of integration from day one and the negative impact of taking action too late to support the integration journey. So I guess the question on this particular draft is how adept is the draft strategy and the department to ensure that the integration journey is not too late and it's not dependent on immigration status, particularly now when we're considering the high intake. This was mentioned before by Breidge around COVID. I think we look at integration and people fulfilling their full potential. And a lot of this is based on people actually having access. Most of our services in the past year and a half have been remote. And I don't know if this integration strategy really acknowledges some of the challenges that that single barrier of not direct access has. Whilst COVID has brought a stop to people with negative decisions being moved out of asylum accommodation, it means that when those negative discontinuations do start again, we have a likelihood of destitution for many people who've received negative decisions. Again, when people have their decision, a positive decision, the refugee journey, again, that integration journey may start again, it may continue, and I think we need to acknowledge that in a strategy, in that transition for a new phase of integration. As with family reunion, it's again very different to someone coming in an asylum route. And again with resettlement, we've seen how the community and voluntary sector have helped to shape and support that service delivery. And I think it's important to note that some of the resettlement, the SVPRS has helped to influence some changes in policy, for example, free ESOL for all refugees, whereas before it was just planning to have that free ESOL for Syrian VPRS families that were coming in. I think with destitution and no recourse to public fund, there is a real risk of this not being recognised and accommodated within a refugee integration strategy. The potential for a strategy in helping to shape anti-destitution strategy and other policy work that can bring about positive change for people. In Northern Ireland, there is a no recourse to public funds reference group that is convened by the SNP, and we know that there is the TEO Crisis Fund with a great deal of data around destitution that's held within the Racial Equality Unit. And within Northern Ireland, this could be a useful space for progression of discussion around how this data can be used and help eradicate destitution. I guess in real terms, the new Scots policy itself is very much rights-based. It recognises the interplay between strategic intent and the real impact on everyday lives. So I think it's important to note that as well as having this strategy and as well as having an aspiration, it really needs to make a difference. And that comes through with clear action plans and resources. I think that the opportunities to integrate, particularly for those who are destitute asylum seekers, we did a piece of work with our service users who were long-term destitute asylum seekers, and and small things like not being able to have that equality of friendship with somebody. You can't go for a coffee. Your contribution, your access to services is very limited, and the need for effective legal advice to review cases. And I think it's really important that within our refugee integration strategy, we look at the long-term support that's needed for the most vulnerable who are with no recourse to public funds. And again, something that Lilian and Bernadette have mentioned is governance structures, implementation and resourcing for the strategy, and the specific budgetary commitments to resources and delivery of the strategy. It's important to note that there should be a consideration for the review of existing Northern Ireland policy and practice across departments to ensure that it is ready and prepared for this refugee integration strategy, and making sure that that policy and practice is continued beyond this one document. We've talked about resources already, and the fact that there is a £2.8 million funding package through AMIF specifically for integration. And I think it's important to take the strategy as being a space to influence other policies and bringing about effective change in that rights-based approach as well. And I guess within the New Scots, they're looking at higher level links within the Scottish Government with ministerial-led working groups to get traction on key issues of policy development alongside having an integration strategy. And also, just finally, in some other countries, Scandinavian countries, where integration support is a legal requirement, not just a strategy. And I think that really gives evidence, and it gives a lot of strength to the commitment that we have in Northern Ireland of supporting long-term integration. So there's a lot there, and hopefully it's given you an idea of some comparisons between what has been happening effectively in Scotland, an overview of the current asylum situation and the range of people with various immigration status that may be impacted and may effectively influence a refugee integration strategy in Northern Ireland. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Marie. That was very detailed, and the multiple pathways for our refugees and asylum seekers that are here, and how that there needs to be more accountability and co-production, and the fact it's interesting that you suggested as well that, you know, the policy and practice, there needs to be an integration across our departments here in order to ensure that the policy that we have actually works, and I'm not sure that has been demonstrated at all. So our final contribution this afternoon is from Coumilah Manjoo. She is a community liaison officer from the Belfast Multicultural Association. So can we bring in Coumilah?
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you perfectly. Thank you.
Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. I want to thank the contributors as well. I welcome the long-awaited publication of this document. However, unfortunately, as someone who works directly with asylum seekers and refugees, I see this document for what it is, aspirational and flawed in many ways. The document lacks, as highlighted by the other contributors, measurability, accountability, and any monitoring process. It fails to address the hostile environment policy, which has been happening since 2012, something that impacts on all refugees and asylum seekers and how they experience life in Northern Ireland. It also has a ripple effect on other ethnic minorities, as the dehumanization inherent in the system increases racial discrimination and asks us to be suspicious of each other. I believe Northern Ireland leaders can do better than this. Now, I know as soon as I mention racism, I will be told about the racial equality strategy, but let's be clear. In 16 years, much of it has not been implemented because, like this document, it failed to include clear timelines and outcomes. We cannot make the same mistake again. The racial equality strategy talks about racism, but this document fails to address systematic racism within the refugee and asylum seekers sector. This cannot be ignored in the refugee integration strategy. when it is such a significant part of the refugee experience, often in unique ways. It also fails to consider how we are actually going to implement this in terms of the language being used, prejudices, counteracting the rhetoric in the media, community cohesion, lived experiences, and racism. As a qualified healthcare professional, I bring to the voluntary sector my expertise and experience, as I'm qualified to holistically assess people when it comes to their needs, rights, and offer emotional support, information, but also more tangible support to deal with different stresses and crisis points. But more importantly, as an immigrant, I am also in a unique position where my response to human injustice and oppression builds from a deeper understanding of what it feels like to feel hurt, humiliation, shame, and also the condition that is required for self-confidence, self-esteem, and self-respect. As a volunteer in BMCA, in the past 2 years, I have been picking up where statutory organizations have failed. To be clear, this is their role, duty, and responsibilities. Asylum seekers and refugees are coming to organizations like BMCA as a last resort. I want to give some example, and this is not only interesting or stories, these are real lives, people's lives. While the job that we do in the statutory sector may be somebody's 9 to 5, this is people lived reality. This is their 24/7. During COVID, people were left vulnerable to destitution. I personally visited families who didn't have support and were relying on statutory services to visit, key workers to visit, but they didn't. We are supporting people who came under the VPRS scheme. If the scheme was a success, I wouldn't have been supporting them 5 years after. They are still struggling with employment, culturally, religious, appropriate food preferences, social isolation, loneliness, access to education and information. I watched the submission by the minister, which spoke of the learning, yet we do not have an independent report that highlights the learning from the VPRS scheme itself. Instead, we entrusted these organizations to write the strategy and prioritize their submission during this consultation period. I have visited families with substandard housing, including one family who were left with no heating and no hot water for 2 weeks. I have supported women fleeing domestic abuse who had no idea where to seek support or what impact this would have on their immigration status. I have supported parents with children on this autism spectrum who do not know how to navigate the system and have been left to navigate this on their own. There are asylum seekers who are made to cross town from West Belfast to South Belfast or any other region for health appointments, and they don't know how to get there, and they don't even have the money for transport. At the start, not all COVID information were translated. There were genuine fears that people had about what to do and where to seek support. These were not there. And this is just to name a few. People seeking sanctuary need to be treated with dignity and respect, to be able to work, study, and contribute to society, to be supported with legal aspects, immigration, mental health during the transition period. Refugees and asylum seekers both have very complex needs and require a trauma-informed approach, which this strategy is lacking. I have seen countless people from the Muslim and migrant communities doing everything they can do to support people with translation, appointments, food, providing emotional and psychological support on a voluntary basis. I myself work full-time and volunteer with BMCA almost every single day of the week. Grassroots organizations like BMCA, Axoni, ISSNI, MSCNI, faith-based organizations and churches all in Belfast are picking up unmet needs that statutory organizations are failing to address for vulnerable members of the society. Their contributions are often unrecognized. If they ceased to exist, it would expose more flaws in the current refugee and asylum seeker processes. It is difficult for people to raise concerns while there are complaints processes. When these are filtered through the organization who run the official schemes, are we expecting it to be open, honest, and transparent? If you were being treated unfairly, but you relied on that same person to put food on your table, would you dare open your mouth about the flaws? The VPRS scheme also relies on translators who not only understand the language, but also the culture. Their skills are invaluable, but they are not valued. They are disheartened as they too face unfair treatment and unstable working conditions and no professional regulatory body monitoring or accountability, while private organizations profit of their labor. Translators are in a unique position to become key workers, yet statutory organizations are failing to utilize their expertise and thus doing a disservice to the whole integration process. Is it because they mean assimilation rather than integration? Understanding the needs of specific community is key to the effective design, delivery, and evaluation of a service. Pursuing fairer access for all, in fact, it makes for a more powerful business case. Therefore, it is crucial that we enter an ongoing dialogue with ethnic minority communities who can prove to be valuable partners and hence tackle inequalities. Having a bold vision and mapping it into equality, diversity, and inclusion strategy, which encompasses anti-racism approaches, should be the key to this strategy. In doing so, it would be beneficial to have a community-based participatory approach, as it can enrich the development of a vision and the strategy. The active involvement of key individuals representing the community of interest in the planning process and at all stages of implementation, including evaluation, should be encouraged. With such a vision, there will be shared responsibility. It would stimulate community participation. And before I am told any of these matters are devolved, I have seen how matters are not devolved or dealt with in Northern Ireland. I have seen the continuing campaigning and lobbying by people here to make things happen. I have seen the energy put into matters that mattered to some parties. Look at how Northern Ireland achieved changes in marriage and abortion rights and the concerted efforts to make that happen. And I know we can do much better than this strategy. We can start by accepting that it is flawed and use this consultation period as an opportunity to genuinely and openly address and include not only the recommendation we put to you today and that others will bring over the course of this consultation period, but also those previously put forward in documents from your own department that have already highlighted what needs to be done. We have to be honest that this strategy is only a sticky plaster on a gaping wound. We have to do better. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much for that, Coumilah. I have one question, and then I'm going to pass it around to the other members. But I have to say, I've had my eyes opened with all of the contributions today. But can you tell me, and I don't know who wants to pick this up, but to what extent were the partnerships that have presented here today, how were they consulted before this draft strategy was published and out there for public consultation? Because the gaps are so wide, and the practical issues that haven't been addressed, the accountability issues, and you know, the co-production piece. They just are every single presentation. There was a running theme right through it. So I just don't understand what level of consultation was in place for this draft strategy. Maybe if I could go to, well, Coumilah, you've kicked it off there, so why don't I go to you?
So is that myself, yeah?
Yes.
Should it? Yeah. I think I worry about how the consultation period for this draft itself has been carried out. Whenever I look at the authors of the draft strategy itself, it's the same organization delivering the service. If there has been no learning since VPRS scheme, we haven't held accountable, or there's been no measurable outcomes and outputs, how is it that none of this is showing in the strategy? I don't know personally of any grassroots organizations who have been involved with this. And I worry that we're only taking into consideration the ones that we want to hear. Is it because we want to pursue the narrative that everything is fine with the scheme? We don't want to expose the flaws of the scheme itself?
Bernadette is back in the room, and I'm going to ask her as well, because I think, Bernadette, you made a telling point in your presentation about asylum seekers are primarily located in Belfast and around the, was it convenience, for the agency contract holders? And could you expand a little bit on that? Because we heard about gaps in services all over the region, and we heard, obviously from Derry Well Women's Centre, and how a lot of the services are actually been delivered on the ground by volunteer organisations, and that doesn't augur well for a robust strategy and a robust plan. Can you maybe just extend just a little bit about that, Bernadette?
Yes, very, very briefly, and thank you. I got back into the room just in time to hear a fair bit of Coumillah's, which I 100% supported. I think the first thing to say is that within the publication of the strategy itself, I was quite surprised that it appeared so quickly last week, because there was definitely, to my mind, a hiatus. There had been work done on it with a number of people. We had been involved, and it was 2 years ago, directly with people seeking asylum for their experiences, and with people, undocumented people. And there had, as I said, been a broad working consultation through, if you like, those with an interest in working in the field. And Ken Fraser led that. And then I think there are practical things. Ken had been off ill, but I was not aware then of where the progress of the development of the strategy itself was taking shape until we saw then quite recently. And it's not just the refugee integration strategy, it's quite a number of things where over a very short period of time the pace has quickened for things to happen which seem to have been not happening. And I'm not sure, and I think I mentioned that in the briefing paper, if that is created by an urgency to get things to a certain level before the lifetime of this assembly would end, and there'd be a necessity to go back to the very beginning. And we're seeing that across a whole series of things. But picking up specifically on your question around agencies and the non-community development approach. And the whole core of outcomes-based planning is that the co-design should be taken by the people. It's a discipline and a process. And within central to that process are the people with the lived experience of the problem that is being addressed. And that isn't happening in this or in any other strategies, because by and large, and Coumilah is quite right, by and large the people, and I think it is about handiness for those developing the work, to the detriment of the value of the work being done. But we have seen it not only in the refugee and integration strategy, we've seen it in the anti-poverty strategy, we've seen it in the disability strategy, and the same dissatisfaction is being expressed, that those who have lived experience, and it's important to see lived experience as expertise. Those who have real expertise are not involved directly in identifying the problems and the potential solutions. And again, picking up on the point, I'm sure others have made it, but I was listening to Coumilah. STEP as an organisation has a 20-year history of creating pathways to skilled employment, to accreditation, and to pathways to higher skills for the immigrant and the refugee population. And we would be one of the few if you would say non-minority ethnic led, in that we are a wider community organisation that now has over 40% of our specialist qualified staff bilingual people who weren't born on this island. And we don't do that out of some sense of charity. We do that because the people who come to us as volunteers, whom we train up, whom we provide with employment, who go on to specialist employment and have then gone on to outgrow our grassroots and local organisation, have expertise that they bring with them, skills, qualifications they bring with them, and lived experience expertise. And this is a vital resource to our community that we are denying the people who need the help and weakening the solution. And so we need to see strategies like, what is the Department of the Economy? What is the pathway in the Department of the Economy for skills building and enterprise for people whose first language is not English? What is the policy for bilingualism? And the people who understand these policies are the people with lived experience, and they don't get asked. And as long as we're dealing with regional organisations whose offices are in Belfast, who can't find their way up the M1, never mind the M2, whom all of us living in the rural areas joke about them packing sandwiches if they're passing Portadown, even in an age of technology, unless the resources, the expertise, the lived experience that is in the wider community and the refugee community and the immigrant and bilingual community are an integral and central part of this equation, we will have a poor strategy.
Can I bring Emma Sheeran into the spotlight, please?
Thank you, Chair. Can you hear me?
Yes, Emma.
Brilliant. Thanks a million. And I just want to thank all the presenters, some of the testimony, particularly from Catherine and Breidge, around the lived experiences of refugees and the different challenges. I mean, that was difficult listening, to be honest. And I know, obviously, as a constituency MLA, and probably everybody else is the same, we can all point to examples of constituents that have contacted us in similarly distressing scenarios, and particularly people with no right to public funds, and the really heartbreaking situations that you end up with as a result of that. I wanted to ask a question around the importance of an intersectional approach to this strategy. Obviously, the things that Jins have all outlined there, we know that the pandemic had a disproportionate impact on women, disproportionate impact on our migrant populations, disproportionate impact on people in areas of high deprivation, and an awful lot of the circumstances that Jins have outlined, people are meeting 2 or 3 or 4 of those protected characteristics. So I just wondered what you would say in relation to the importance of intersectionality when working on the strategy.
Emma, who would you like to answer that? Sorry.
Pro norm. Well, whoever is comfortable. If Catherine and Breidge, given just the particular examples that they gave around, like the housing executive and issues with tenancy agreements and housing, but open to anyone who wants to jump in there.
I'm hesitant to come in ahead of other people, other than to say that Emma, it's crucial and key to it in any local area is the local support group. And many of our members, for example, Lilian and Northwest Migrant Forum, the Interethnic Forum in Mid and East Antrim Council, the OMA Ethnic Support Group, Strabane Ethnic, these are all grassroots organisations that by and large are led and supported by the immigrant population, be they first or second generation, and volunteering within them, and when they can, working within them, the bilingual community, which is either refugee or seeking refugee status and unable to work. These are the core that are making the links. These are the organisations through which the client and human being based centred work is being done, where at the heart of the equation is the person. And it's in these centres that you'll find somebody negotiating with the housing executive and then filling in the discretionary grant form, and then supporting people with the language when they go into the local advice centre, and yet they are the people with the least resources and the least pathways into employment in those areas of work or professionalisation of those skills, where you know, if we had a strategy for employing bilingual immigrants within the civil service, if we had a strategy for employing bilingual people within the housing executive, if it was a distinct advantage to have lived experience of seeking refuge, of being an asylum seeker, of being an undocumented person, of being a traveller, if that was a skill that was measured along with having a qualification in social work, one language and no empathy.
I mean, everything that you're saying.
I hasten to add that the 99% of our social workers do not fall into that category. But the point that I'm making is that we have a Victorian system of recruitment around formal qualifications gained within the United Kingdom, and an assumption that they are superior to everything else.
Yeah, no, everything that you're saying there makes sense. Oh, Bronor, I'm sorry.
Thank you, Emma.
I think there might be a delay.
Thank you, Emma. I would just like to build on what Bernadette said there in terms of the community-led organisations and in terms of intersectionality. And I really think and feel strongly that in terms of going back to the initial remit for the VPRS scheme, that it was families with complex health needs and women and children in danger, that any strategy, any consultation must, and underline must, include the women's centres and women's organisations. It's to these centres that the women are coming. We are the place that are providing free childcare, culturally sensitive education to the women. And remember, the women are already marginalised, disadvantaged when they come. They are often invisible, often not heard. So it is integral to any government department who is talking about refugee, asylum seeking, to look at the part, the woman and the children in it. And in terms of places like, not where the woman centred Derry, in terms of like us and the pandemic and the advice and the educational needs and the social welfare needs, all of that have stemmed from here, while supporting not just refugee and asylum women, but last Tuesday in our multicultural group, women's group, we had women from 15 different countries. That's the remit, because of course there's women who come de facto as part of their husband who are doctors, visas, women whose husbands are studying at the university, women who are students, women who, so it's very, very important to not be making any policies without consulting the woman. That is critical.
Absolutely. Chair, if I could just ask one more question. I suppose, the comments that Bernadette had made in her second contribution, or her answer to the chair's question, around the sort of rural isolation and being a rural refugee, that's another, I suppose, disproportionately impacted group, and additional pressure, and I suppose another element of the intersectionality, although we often probably don't think of rural dwellers in the same way that we think of the other protected characteristics. But just on top of that, then, I obviously chair the Bill of Rights committee that had been established following the NDNA New Jacket New Approach Agreement, and we had conclusion of that committee in poor circumstances a fortnight ago, following the DUP submitting a paper saying that they don't agree that there is a basis for a Bill of Rights in the North, and are refusing to allow us to appoint a panel of experts. Now, combined then with the Tory government's current talk around the Human Rights Act and the bill that they're progressing through Westminster at the minute, the called Borders Bill, obviously you add that to Brexit, and you have we've seen a rise in racist incidents, and the whole sort of rise in xenophobia and racism, and the normalisation of that sort of language, and the impact that that's had then on migrant workers and refugees, asylum seekers. So I wondered if any of the contributors had thoughts on the impact that a Bill of Rights might have, that actually put these people's lives to the forefront and ensured delivery of the services, all of which have been touched upon in people's real life experiences. Thanks very much.
Chair, would it be possible for me to just comment with regards to BME women? And
Yeah, and then can I bring in Lilian, because her hand was up there earlier. I think she's having some technical difficulties as well. So, okay.
I just wanted to highlight that the reason that we do not have specialist services, BME Women Group, is because none of these are funded. Most of the women's centers are funded. If we don't have an ethic monitoring, so we are not able to collate any data with regards to how many BME women are there and what their issues are. BME women have a voice of their own. If we want to know about intersectionality, we need to be listening to the women themselves, because they are not passive followers of their husbands. They have a voice of their own, and this is something that we should always make sure that is at the center of all of this. Listen to what the women have to say themselves. That's it. Thank you.
Correct.
Can I bring Lilian in, please?
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Lilian.
Okay, thank you, Chair. I just want to, first of all, answer your question that you asked earlier about consultation. I think the evidence that has been provided today can absolutely guarantee you that there was no consultation directly people with lived experiences, apart from a few years ago, which I mentioned, that 2015, 2016. Also that report that I also alluded to in my contribution, which is at the Executive Office website. That specific research that was done by Dr. Fiona Murphy and Dr. Olike M. Vietan has a lot of evidence that of experiences of asylum seekers and refugees that could have been used to form this draft strategy that we have right now. To go to Emma's question, I absolutely agree with Bernadette. And if we want to focus specific on the draft document, there is no account, it has not taken into account the impact of COVID-19. It has not taken into account the intersectionality and I want to applaud the Women's Center for giving a really detailed experiences of the Syrian refugees. I know them. We work with them, and they work with the Women's Center, so I can affirm what they're saying in terms of those experiences. So if we really, really want a core design, a core production document that will meet the needs of asylum seekers and refugees, then they have to be included in that design. And Coumilah made it very clear earlier. There are organizations that are doing their best within in grassroots level, but they're not supported. They're absolutely not supported. Women's Center is one of the groups that does not get funding to support those people with lived experiences. We don't, as the Northwest Migrants Forum. Stronger Together doesn't. And those people come back to us when they have been left after 1 year of the support that they got. Most of the support they got is inadequate, and at some point it is inappropriate. And that is why it is really important when this document is published, it should have covered all that, but it hasn't. That's why we have to ask the questions why, when the evidence is available, when the people are very accessible, but that part of their evidence was ignored.
Okay, thank you. Chair, may I come in, please?
Yes, Anne-Marie, go ahead.
Thank you. I can't find the hand function on here. Apologies, the raised hand. Just in answer to Emma's question, just around the Bill of Rights, Red Cross did work with a number of people, refugees, asylum seekers of different immigration status from 11 different countries to take part in all the consultations. We did some workshops around the Bill of Rights. And it was really important at that time. People had a lot to say, and they felt their feedback was that their voices were being heard, that there's an opportunity for people to really feel like a part of Northern Ireland, an opportunity to engage and contribute. Disappointed to hear where it's at this stage. However, there was great interest at that point with the engagement with NIA and the Assembly around that. So if that should happen again, we would definitely bring people, try to bring people with lived experience into a place to co-produce a workshop to disseminate information around the Bill of Rights to start with, and in addition to that, to ensure that there was a produced programme of engagement with lived experience. Red Cross will be conducting some research and some co-production pieces with the wider refugee and asylum population across Northern Ireland, including those who have arrived through resettlement, to feed back into this consultation as part of the consultation to produce a report. There's also been beginnings of a movement within the refugee voices to have their lived experience. They've been funded outside of Red Cross, but been funded to develop and explore whether there is the appetite to have a particular forum of refugee voices in Northern Ireland. And that's really encouraging. And that will be led by those who are refugees and asylum seekers. I acknowledge that this is very much a draft, and we have an opportunity now to really mobilize and gather as much information and feedback and share information about this draft strategy to as many people, to ensure that lived experience does inform not just on what this refugee integration strategy is in its draft form, in particular about the gaps and the things that we've spoken about today, and where these gaps are, what needs to be further progressed. So I welcome the fact this is a first draft, and I'm looking forward to the opportunity over the next couple of months to really help to shape that and to influence what needs to be in there and to build on what is there as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much, Anne-Marie. There's part of me that really thinks that, you know, doing the lived experience after the publication of the draft strategy is a wee bit like the cart before the horse. But can I bring Pat Sheehan into the spotlight, please?
Thanks, Sinead, and thanks to all the contributors here today. There's not much I could disagree with what I've heard today, and despite there being a a hostile environment for immigrants, refugees and asylum seekers, and the hostility in particular from this British government, and the fact that immigration is a devolved matter. You're absolutely right. It doesn't mean that we shouldn't be doing anything. We as political leaders have a responsibility to try and resolve issues for people who arrive on these shores. And the fact is that many of the refugees and asylum seekers who have arrived here are among the most vulnerable in society. And we as political representatives have a moral responsibility to help the most vulnerable in our society. And I agree with what has been said also about the strategy. I mean, if it's not co-produced and co-designed with people who have that lived experience, then it's not worth the paper it's written on. And I agree absolutely wholeheartedly with that. I've no real question in there. We also, I suppose, the other point is, as Lilian said, we need to look to international best practice also. So there's no real question in there, but if anybody wants to comment, feel free. Thanks.
Any comments? Lilian has her hand up.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would like to comment because there's great learning that we can learn from international people who have so much experience. But I want to talk about belonging because it really works on both sides. And because I'm really keen on focusing on the actual integration strategy that we have right now, this draft. And if you look at the outcomes, which are high outcomes, there is outcome 4, which talks about refugees and asylum seekers are supported to achieve their full potential. Now, refugees and asylum seekers have access to services and support to achieve their full potential. If you were to break this down, and that's how you know that this document is flawed, it looks like we are just going through processes than an action plan to bring these outcomes to reality. For a successful integration policy, we need to know when these people would achieve this full potential. An asylum seeker will not be able to achieve the full potential because of the hostile environment policy that we have does not allow them to work or even contribute. We also need to make sure when people on arrival, whether through a government resettlement program or other routes, we should have a program in place which offers improved orientation, English language was spoken earlier. The English language that is being provided in terms of refugees. We saw an advert recently from the Department for Economy. It is specific to Syrian refugees. So what about the rest refugees who are not coming through a government program? Now, talk about health screening and mental health support to help these refugees to settle within the community. I'll give an example, because I mentioned earlier that I would like to give an example which is more related to the vision of our strategy right now. Now, in my view, the vision for refugees should focus on refugees participating fully and integrated socially and economically as soon as possible, and they live independently, undertaking the same responsibilities and exercising the same rights as other Northern Irish citizens, and have that strong sense of belonging that we all want to have. You speak to one of the families that is in Derry, and I have consent to speak about their story, their lived story here. They moved here in Derry in 2018 through the VPRF scheme. All they think about is their daughter, their sister, their grandchildren who are left behind. They have been fighting for them to come here for the last 3 years. We want to be reunited. But we get told by the executive office that it is really not their responsibility. They will advocate for this family to come to be reunited, but they got that family here, knowing that their family is going to be divided. So the reunification is not being taken seriously. How will those refugees feel they belong here, or have a sense of belonging that their family is not with them? So we really need to look at the outcomes we have developed, because the reality is false. It's false hope for the refugees and asylum seekers with the environment that we are looking at right now. They need to be practical. Otherwise, we will come back again after a very long period of time when people have really gone through dire situations to start afresh again. So this is the time we have to make sure this is done right.
Can I ask if any other of our members that are joining us remotely, have they any questions that they would like to ask or any observations? Diane, did I see Diane Dodds raising her hand? Yeah, can we bring Diane
Chair,
Dodds?
for some reason or other, I can see you, but I cannot get the camera turned on.
Not to worry, Diane. There's lots of technical problems today.
I don't know what's going on.
Go ahead, Diane.
Hello?
Hello, go ahead, Diane.
Okay, sorry, my apologies. I don't know what's wrong this afternoon with us, but it was doing the same thing this morning, so it's not just this meeting. Can I sort of, first of all, say thank you for everyone for their contributions today. It certainly is probably one of the most important items that we have discussed for a significant period of time. If I was to ask, I mean, I also sit along with Pat on the Education Committee. So I am interested in the impact or the access to education for those who are asylum seekers and refugees, and how you think that works out, both as children go through school and then into later life. And I did notice a very heartwarming story today of a young girl who had been a refugee and I think had gone into law. And it's really amazing to see someone who's had such a difficult start in life be able to progress and be able to call, you know, somewhere her home and be able to make her and her family prosperous through that access to education. But it's really the issue around access to education, because we've covered some of the issues around jobs and benefits and housing. Education.
Chair, could I comment on this, please?
Yes, okay, go ahead, Coumilah.
I also want to comment on what was previously said. While looking at international expertise, I think it is also very important that we do not ignore expert by experience in Northern Ireland itself. As I said before, translators are in a unique position. They have gone through the scheme. They know what the flaws are. Why are their capacity not being built to become key workers? I think we're doing ourselves a huge disservice by not doing that. And the recent paper by the Department of Health looked at co-production, and it referred to groups as unheard of groups. It's not that groups are unheard of, it's because people are not listening. We're not listening to the voices that are on the ground. And I want to echo what Lilian said as well with regards to family reunification. I asked a dozen of asylum seekers before coming on this forum today, is there anything that they wanted me to highlight? There's been another one with regards to family reunification. So it is an issue, and it is something that we are not addressing. But also, I have yet to meet an asylum seeker who hasn't highlighted the need to be able to work. I have yet to meet one of those. And it is not about only earning money. It is about dignity and respect that people are afforded. I myself know what it's like to counteract this impression that people have about ethnic minorities being scroungers. And I know how hard I've worked to be able to to get that impression away. Now, with regards to education, I speak to asylum seekers with huge skill. I've spoken to a woman who is an engineer in her country. These are skill and expertise that we are not making use of. We're not recognizing the skills that people are bringing into Northern Ireland. We're failing to do so. During a pandemic where we were actually crying out for people to come and help in the health service, this is something that we could have been helping asylum seekers utilize this skill. We're not doing that. Women are not being able to access education because of lack of childcare. Every single thing seems to be devoted to ESOL. There are women who I've spoken to who already have a very good written and spoken English, but there are different levels, and some of the level are not high enough for them to be going into that. While people are waiting for their refugee status to be granted, if it is granted, why are we not upskilling people in that period of time, making sure that whenever they do get their refugee status, they can already contribute to society? We're failing to make use of that. And asylum seekers are not able to go to, a lot of them who I've spoken to haven't been able to go to university because of funds. Now, we're leaving it up to the public to raise funds for these people, but these are unmet needs by statutory organization. We have families who are larger families, for example, a family of 5 who are being given 1 laptop to actually do the homework, and also expecting the mother to be using the same laptop for herself to access education, to be able to do her courses. How is that possible? And not only that, they are being given laptop, but with no internet access. During COVID, we all know how everybody needed to have a laptop and internet access. None of these things have been considered when it comes to education. We talk about integration all the time, but what does it actually mean? If you look at the Maslow hierarchy of needs, what are we meeting? We're giving people a roof over their head, and we want them to be grateful for what they have, and everything else we're failing to provide them. This is a failure. And it's not something that we do not know of. We know absolutely well what is going on. While we're saying that we're committed and willing to do that, actions are not following up to ensure that that's what's happening. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I have no other indications from the members of the committee for any questions, so I am going to close out of this session. I want to give an observation and a commitment to all of the contributors today. First of all, this has been really informative session. It's been very productive, and in many ways it feels to me like a micro-inquiry into the actual document itself. I have taken copious notes, and I know that the committee team has also been taking a lot of notes. And we will be doing a debrief on this and a summary document, and we will be feeding it back to the officials in the department. And I think that, we will be looking for their responses. We're particularly looking for their responses around the co-production piece. But an awful lot of really valuable and insightful information has been shared with your organisations, or from your organisations today, and we're really, really grateful. This is an opportunity to get a very strong and robust refugee integration strategy. We can be leaders here. We don't have to be followers. We don't have to look at other devolved administrations in order to see what they deliver. We can actually deliver something very unique and very supportive on the ground. We're a very, very small area, and we should be able to provide services that are exceptional and not just basic services to kind of tick any boxes. And I don't want any of your organisations to feel that this was a tick box exercise. It certainly is going to be something that we are going to be constructive with into the future. So I want to thank Bernadette, Lilian, Catherine, Breidge, Anne-Marie and Coumilah for attending this meeting. It has been very worthwhile and your insight is valuable. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, members, are you content with the actions that I outlined there, that we will have a briefing paper and feed it back into the officials in the department? I think that there's an awful lot raised here and an awful lot of work needs to go in now to make this strategy something that is user-friendly and is not aspirational, and it is actually a very practical response on the ground. Okay, thank you. Members, I'm aware that there are other briefing. Our other briefing is online at the minute. Yes, they are. So I'm going to leave our committee business to after our second oral briefing, if members are happy to stick with that. So I'm going to go directly to item number 6 on our agenda, and it's the Centre for Cross-Border Studies oral briefing, and I can refer members to pages 89 to 101 of the meeting pack for the relevant papers. And can I welcome to the meeting Dr. Anthony Soares, Director of Centre for Cross-Border Studies, and Megan McDermott, Project Support Officer for the Centre of Cross-Border Studies. This session is not being recorded by Hansard, but a video of the meeting will be available on the committee webpage. Can I invite Anthony and Megan to brief the members? Thank you. And sorry by the way, sorry for the delay, but we had a very stimulating session just before you.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, members of this committee. And I agree, it was a fascinating session. We sat in on it, and really interesting session. And actually, some of the issues that were raised there kind of overlap into some of the issues that we might be raising here today. So thank you very much. But I'm actually going to hand over to my colleague Megan McDermott, who's going to make a kind of introductory statement, and then depending on the wishes of the committee, you can either ask questions immediately, or I can expand on some of the points made by Megan. So I'm going to hand over to Megan.
Thank you, Anthony. Can I just check that everybody can hear me?
Yes, we can, Megan. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Chair. And thanks to the committee for the invitation to speak. So we were asked to speak to the commitments in the Northern Ireland Protocol and the Trade and Cooperation Agreement in relation to civic engagement and the opportunities for establishing mechanisms for such engagement. So I'm conscious of time. I'll give a very brief summary of the core points we submitted in our written evidence. And then, as Anthony said, we're happy to elaborate or to take questions on any aspect of that. So the first point to make, and really the reason we're here, is in our view, there isn't currently an adequate system for structured, regular and transparent engagement between civic society here in Northern Ireland and representatives of regional, national and EU bodies. It's maybe exacerbated by the lack of those structures that exist for engagement with UK civic society in general and with Northern Ireland civic society in particular. And those lack of structures are, I suppose, most exposed obviously during periods of serious or major transition, the most obvious being the current pandemic, but also the ongoing Brexit process, which actually necessitates consultation with civic society on the withdrawal agreement containing the protocol and the Trade and Cooperation Agreement more broadly. Because there is no adequate system in place, it means that policymakers at a regional, governmental or EU level who do want to consult with Northern Ireland stakeholders in relation to the protocol are doing so on an ad hoc basis with no transparent or structured process, as I said. Just 2 points before I get into what mechanisms do actually exist. Firstly, we'd like to make it clear, because it is made clear to us in our work, that this lack of structured engagement isn't a reflection of civic society's willingness to engage, or indeed its ongoing attempts to engage. So those efforts are seen, for example, in the establishment of the ad hoc group on North-South and East-West cooperation which we convene, as well as the Northern Ireland Civic Working Group on the protocol and the Northern Ireland Business Brexit Working Group. That's just a few examples, there are more. It's also important, I suppose, to acknowledge that civic society's desire to engage and to collaborate, it is a long-standing one, and it does predate the UK's withdrawal from the EU. So we can see that in the work that the Centre did or began in 2014 with a broad range of civic society organisations from Northern Ireland, the Republic of Ireland, as well as England, Scotland and Wales. And what that work produced was an agreed vision and set of principles for cooperation, and that's called the New Common Charter for Cooperation within and between these islands. It's a live project and we'd be very happy to discuss it further with you. So what we have currently is limited, imperfect mechanisms to engage with governance structures for the withdrawal agreement relating to the protocol, namely the Joint Committee, the Specialised Committee and the Joint Consultative Working Group. Looking ahead then to the near future, there are outstanding structures for engagement with civic society under the Trade and Cooperation Agreement. So these include the establishment of respective UK and EU domestic advisory groups, as well as a civil society forum. And we can certainly give more detail and updates on the progress of both of those. In addition, then, the government's July command paper and the European Commission's October proposals to reform the protocol, they include recommendations for better and more transparent engagement with civic society, and that's obviously very welcome. The most notable of these, and something we will likely touch on, is the establishment of fora for structured dialogue between stakeholders. So that includes Northern Ireland civic society and business, as well as experts in EU institutions and UK counterparts, including Northern Ireland authorities. So while these proposals are welcome, as I said, we do propose additional practical measures to further improve engagement. These are outlined in your briefing, and no doubt Anthony will elaborate on them, but just to give a very brief overview, we would like to see the identification of contact points for civic society organisations within the Joint Committee and Specialised Committee, the establishment of an outlined schedule of meetings between civic society reps and the Joint Committee and Specialised Committee, the timetabling of meetings with the Joint Consultative Working Group, agreed and publicly available agendas for meetings between civic society reps and the Joint and Specialised Committees, and finally a publicly available record of the principal issues discussed during those meetings. Just two final observations on the cross-border side of things specifically. Firstly, as members know, it is the role of the Joint Committee to oversee and monitor the implementation of the protocol. Article 1 of the protocol commits to maintain the necessary conditions for continued North-South cooperation. So it should be noted then that no proper monitoring as to whether the implementation of the protocol is maintaining the necessary conditions for North-South cooperation can be undertaken without engaging with civic society from both poles of that dimension of cooperation, North and South. This is not a reality that's being acknowledged in those latest proposals for improving consultation with civic society on the protocol, and that is a concern for us. Secondly, and finally, there is a lack of protection afforded to East-West cooperation under the protocol, and it is crucial that the UK government fully supports and facilitates East-West channels of civic society cooperation engagement through the mechanisms established or those currently being established as I outlined. So we're happy to take questions or elaborate on any of those points, and obviously if there's anything we can't answer today, we're happy to make further written clarification. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Megan, and I think it's really important that this element of the protocol is not lost and it's not overlooked. And we've said it many times in this committee about the democratic deficit that elected representatives feel, but also civic society. And there's been a lot of engagement, but it is ad hoc, and that too can lead to trouble down the line. But are there any examples from other places where civil society mechanisms actually feed into trade agreements? You've kind of alluded to that, Megan, and you said you would discuss it in detail. But you know, between the EU and third countries, and what are they? And can you maybe give us examples of what contribution that they make overall?
Perhaps I'll attempt to briefly answer or respond to that question, Chair. The EU has establishes advisory groups under most of its trade agreements and other agreements, including obviously with third countries, and establishing those kind of those civic society dialogues between the European Union and those third countries. So there is established practice within the European Union in terms of establishing these platforms for dialogue with civic society, although it must be acknowledged that the experience differs from one situation to the next. Some work more efficiently than others, some are more effective than others. It really depends on the context in terms of the relationship between the European Union and that particular third country, sometimes the context within the third country itself, and particularly what the practice is in terms of civic society dialogue within that third country that can affect that establishment of civic society dialogue between the EU and those third countries. So there is established practice in terms of establishing that dialogue.
And just following on from that, Anthony, why do you think that there has been delays in the establishment of the UK Domestic Advisory Group and the Civic Society Forum?
I think that the who is best placed to answer that would be the UK government itself. But I mean, I can offer some opinions on that. And one of them is actually that the time it took for us to actually, the UK and the EU, to actually come to a withdrawal agreement. So things have had to be kind of put on hold until we knew what the withdrawal agreement looked like and what the mechanisms were under that. And obviously in terms of the trade and cooperation agreement, then exactly the same thing, the kind of delay in getting to an agreement and therefore a delay in establishing those mechanisms. But there has been a push more recently in terms of the establishment of the UK Domestic Advisory Group. So there was a consultation initially on the establishment of the UK Domestic Advisory Group and the Civil Society Forum. It was a short consultation. Centre for Cross-Border Studies is one of the organisations that responded to that. Since then, there was a process open for organisations to come forward and put forward expressions of interest in terms of being on that domestic advisory group and or on the Civic Society Forum. That process was actually was supposed to finish on the 9th of November, but it was then extended for a further 2 or 3 weeks in order to receive more expressions of interest. And one of the things that I know that the UK government has expressed a desire in terms of the nature of the UK Domestic Advisory Group is to ensure that there is regional representation, so that there is representation from Northern Ireland, Scotland and Wales and England, of course, that there's a balance there, and that Domestic Advisory Group represents the views of all of the parts of the United Kingdom in terms of that Domestic Advisory Group. There perhaps has been some difficulty in terms of communicating that this domestic advisory group was actually being established from conversations with various organisations in Northern Ireland. There hasn't really been an awareness that this was actually being established, or that the UK government was actually looking for organisations to express an interest in becoming part of the domestic advisory group. However, it should also be noted that in the UK government's response to the consultation, once they received the responses, the UK government made it quite clear that in terms of any organisation participating in the Domestic Advisory Group or the Civic Society Forum, there will be no resourcing provided for that. So the UK government is not providing resources. So that could be a chilling factor in terms of especially smaller organisations wishing to put themselves forward to be part of something that could be quite onerous, and that they might not have the resources in-house to effectively engage. So therefore they might not have come forward and presented themselves to be part of the Domestic Advisory Group. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Anthony, for that. Can I bring Pat Sheehan into the spotlight, please?
Thanks, Chair. And thanks to both of you for your contributions so far. Comparing the British government Stern paper and the EU non-paper, would it be fair to say that the EU paper has more detailed proposals around the area of civic engagement? And is there any way that we could build on those proposals? Thanks.
Thank you. And with your permission, Chair, I'll just respond to that. Yes, there is definitely much more detail in terms of the October proposal and the non-paper that the Commission published specifically on engagement with stakeholders. The July command paper for the UK government did also express a desire to improve engagement with business and wider civic society, but without necessarily coming forward with any specific proposals on how that would take place. The one thing that we would say, and we are concerned with this, and we have raised it with both the Commission and with the UK government and with others, is in terms of that piece around within the protocol. So here, within the protocol, Article 11, the one that talks about maintaining the necessary conditions for North-South cooperation, we are concerned that there should be a fora that looks specifically at that, and that includes civic society organisations from both Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, because you cannot really monitor the conditions of North-South cooperation by just speaking to one side of that cooperation pole. You need to have a platform where organisations north and south can come together and can engage directly with the mechanisms under the protocol. But as Megan referred to, there is also then, because the organisations that we work with on a daily basis, including ourselves, we work on a north-south basis. We work daily with organisations, community organisations in the south, but we also work with organisations in Scotland, England and Wales. Most of the organisations that we work with work on both a north-south and an east-west basis. And we have raised this before, and we have pointed it out to the UK government and the Commission itself. The protocol, whereas in the preamble to the protocol, it refers to the need to protect east-west cooperation, the articles of the protocol itself refer just to North-South cooperation. So we have to look elsewhere to ensure that organisations here, North and South on the island of Ireland, can continue to cooperate, can continue to engage in mutually beneficial dialogue on an East-West basis as well. And the place that we perhaps have to look at that is through the Trade and Cooperation Agreement and the mechanisms being established under that. So yes, just to briefly return to the nub of the question, the Commission's proposals were much more detailed than the UK government's July command paper, and we need to build on that. And one of the areas we need to build on that is ensuring that organisations of the Republic of Ireland are present in those discussions that are on North-South cooperation, which is absolutely vital as part of the Belfast Good Friday Agreement, as are the East-West relations as well. Thank you.
And do you feel there's any resistance from the British government to that actually taking place?
I think that one of the issues is it's around political sensitivity, and I mean it from both sides, not just UK government. It's perhaps the European Commission not wanting to suggest something that will be seen as interfering with internal UK domestic matters or interfering in a delicate balance in terms of relations. And the UK government also might be sensitive as to interfering in an area that is in terms of Strand 2, the Good Friday Agreement, which is between the administration in Northern Ireland and the government in the Republic of Ireland, which is a Strand 2 issue, and not wanting to step on that. So I have to say that both sides have been positive in when we raise this issue, but it's getting beyond the positive reception and actually seeing this being put into concrete proposals, that we actually see something happening, because otherwise we risk, in terms of the protocol, we risk missing out on a system, on a platform where both sides of the North-South cooperation pole come together to discuss, to provide evidence on how the implementation of the protocol is affecting or not affecting our ability to cooperate on a North-South basis.
Okay, thanks for that. And just to move on to another sort of issue, currently the Assembly is tied into the Parliamentary Partnership Assembly under the broad umbrella of the British government. I'm just wondering if you could ever envisage an explicitly direct link between the Assembly and Brussels. Because there is a belief here that the British government isn't representing the views of the majority of the population here. Thanks.
Thank you. Megan, do you want to come in on that one, or you?
Unmute here will be a good first step. Just in terms of the Parliamentary Partnership Assembly, as you know, the latest update on it is that the European Parliament intends to appoint a delegation of 35 members to it, and that's going to be matched by the UK delegation. It's envisaged it'll probably respect the party balances in both houses, so there'll be 21 MPs and 14 Lords members. It will be led then by a bureau, and the bureau will meet in between plenary sessions, but essentially the full PPA is likely to meet twice a year, and it is anticipated that observers from the devolved legislatures will also be invited to attend. I suppose it doesn't get to the heart of Pat's question, which is, will there be, or can we envisage a further engagement directly with the EU on that? Anthony, maybe you have something to add.
What I would stress, and it actually comes to an issue that, again, that I'm concerned with, it is that we can't see Northern Ireland in isolation. We can't isolate Northern Ireland, and we have to remind ourselves this is in terms of the protocol. It's the protocol on Ireland, Northern Ireland. It's not the Northern Ireland Protocol. It's a protocol on Ireland, Northern Ireland for a reason. And we have to avoid just looking at Northern Ireland in isolation as a problem. Northern Ireland is connected. It has relations on this island, on these islands, and a European dimension as well. So businesses operate across this island, these islands, and across Europe. Community organisations operate north, south, east, west, and in a European dimension. And we have to ensure that the Northern Ireland's political or institutions continue to have that outward-facing, that outward-looking vision, that we don't focus just in on ourselves, that we have that presence wherever we need that presence to be, including, for example, we do have an office in Brussels. There is a Northern Ireland Executive Office in Brussels, and we have been frequent visitors in the past. Before the COVID pandemic, we were frequent visitors to that office. It's an absolutely brilliant resource in terms of having that place that people from Northern Ireland can go to, can present what we have to offer, but also to get learning from others in Europe. And I think we need to continue to have that presence there. There are other regions who are not EU member states that have presence in Brussels because they want to have a platform. They want to showcase what they have to offer. And I think it's really important that we continue to do that, that we reflect the way that business, the way that community organisations work, that the dialogues that they have, and our own citizens. The people from here, we don't stay in a place. Many of us cross the border here. So for especially border communities, we're crossing the border all the time. We have family relationships in GB. We have working relations with others in Europe, and we have to ensure that Northern Ireland continues to have that outward-looking ability, that outward-looking vision, and that we don't become isolated, and that we resist attempts to isolate us here in Northern Ireland. So, in answer to the question, I really would recommend that the Northern Ireland political institutions, that Northern Ireland continues to have a presence in Brussels to showcase what we have here to offer from here.
Okay, thanks for that. Thanks, Chair.
Okay, I have had no other indications of anybody wanting to ask any questions. I want to thank Anthony and Megan for their briefing, and we'll discuss the contents of your briefing with the members after this session. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay, members, would you be content or agree that we would write to the Joint First Ministers and ask them for an update on their engagement with the UK and the EU and the Republic of Ireland in relation to the establishment of civic society mechanisms in and around the Northern Ireland Protocol?
Yeah.
Yeah, is that okay? Can we agree?
Agreed.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. And can I move back now to Chair's business? Okay, the first item of Chair business is just to inform members that I'll be travelling to London to attend the first meeting of the reconvened Inter-Parliamentary Forum in the House of Lords. Actually, I'm going out tomorrow morning, but that's on Friday, and we're having a meeting with Lord Jay, the Chair of the Lords Subcommittee on the Protocol, and that's arranged for tomorrow afternoon. So I'll be travelling along with the Chair of the Economy Committee, so we're on tour. Sorry, Diane, your your mic is on.
All right, we have an issue in the office, a flood.
Oh dear. You have my sympathy. Also, I'd like to raise a point regarding the correspondence, and if we could just deal with it. It was from the First Minister and Deputy First Minister on page 121 of your packs relating to the subsequent employment arrangements of the former interim head of the Northern Ireland Civil Service, Jenny Piper. This is a really important issue for a scrutiny committee such as ours. So we got a reply from the joint ministers, but it actually raised more questions than it actually gave answers. So from the letter, there are a few areas that I would like further clarification. So I just would seek your agreement for us to write back and seek clarification. And these are the areas that I want to seek clarification on. So why was Jenny Piper appointed as an SIB employee? It's not clear whether she was an employee in SIB before she actually became the interim head of the civil service. So I want to clarify that. And also, whose this initiative was she employed as an employee of SIB for her secondment? And then what does the SIB not, why does the SIB not have the same rules regarding the revolving door as, for example, the Northern Ireland Civil Service? I don't understand that either. And I believe that the SIB should have the same revolving door policy on employment as the Northern Ireland Civil Service, but given that its role provides even a greater risk of conflicts of interest, and I'm thinking here about even the interim chief executive of the Maes Long Caish is also on secondment from SIB, so I just don't understand this relationship, and there could be conflicts of interest all over the place if this is a regular occurrence where arm's length bodies of the executive office are appointing chief executives to other arm's length bodies of the executive office. I just need this all clarified. And if we are now told that the utility regulator has comparable rules to the Northern Ireland Civil Service in terms of revolving door employment, how come Jenny Piper was able to move to Firmus so quickly? And if members are happy enough, I think we need to go back and ask these questions so that we can have further clarification, because I'm still not content with the responses that we have received. Are members okay for us to write a further letter to the Joint First Ministers? Yeah.
Agreed.
Okay, thank you. So I'm moving on to item number 3, the draft minutes. The draft minutes of the meeting held on the 1st of December 2021 at pages 6 to 12 of the meeting pack. If members are content with the minutes as a true reflection of the meeting, I'm happy to sign. Okay. Okay, thank you. Item number 4, matters arising. Members, we're coming back because we had a discussion last week about the Maze location and our site visit, etc. And we listed several options, and members indicated that they wanted more time to kind of look over the options in the intervening week. So I just want to update, and I'm taking them from the bottom up this time, so update members on the options and see if we can get any further. If you remember last week, I suggested that we bring in SIB senior management to give us a briefing, and that has been scheduled, and that will take place, I believe, in February. At some stage in February, so that is in our forward work programme. But just in the intervening time, are members happy to write to the department to ask that the lease agreement with the Ulster Aviation Society be changed as follows: to be renewed every 3 years instead of every 6 months, to allow the society to advertise? That's one suggestion. Are members happy with that suggestion to go forward?
Yeah. Chair, could I come in there?
Yes, you can, of course, Pat.
I mean, in principle, I don't have a difficulty with that. My issue is as follows. Yeah. There was an agreement reached around the development of this particular site, and the DUP reneged on it. And you referenced that last week in your Proclaimers song. I mean, I think when parties renege on commitments, we can't just give in to them. You know, the agreement was that the whole site would be developed, the prison buildings, the prison hospital and so on are central to this development, and the DUP have effectively blocked that, and that's the reason why no further development has taken place, except with the provision that the agricultural show could take place there. So, I mean, we need to resolve that problem, and I don't think it's going to happen piecemeal. I have every sympathy for the Aviation Society and the difficulties they have, and I've no difficulty with the committee writing to the Executive Office and asking them about that particular issue. But in the broader issue, we need to get agreement about moving forward with this whole site. Thanks.
Okay, have any other members any reflections? And, you know, Trevor, I know that this is your constituency, so I'm sure you have.
Well, I would tend to agree with Pat. There's two issues there, the broader one and the specific one. Mm-hmm. I don't think we should allow the broader problem, and I acknowledge whose fault it was, to impede the progress of the Aviation Society. They have a specific problem. It's costing them enormous opportunities to raise money and get grants and so on. I think we should do both, really.
Okay.
Chair.
Yes,
Chair, could I?
Go ahead. Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I think Pat knows fine well that this will require broader political agreement. But in the meantime, what we're doing actually is holding back the Ulster Aviation Society and impeding their ability to develop the museum. They've already done amazing things with limited resources and in difficult circumstances. And I cannot see why on earth we would want to hold them back any further. And so I would agree with writing and asking, can we resolve the issue for the Ulster Aviation Society to allow them to develop the museum, which is, after all, I mean, historic and is really doing amazing work. I don't know, I've been down to it, so I have seen it, and it is very, very impressive.
There are a number of other actions, and I suppose if we can't get a broad consensus around the first one, which is the easiest one, which is the Ulster Aviation Society. But I do agree, and as I said last week, you know, there are real broad fundamental issues about the entire redevelopment of this site that needs it needs senior leadership within the Executive Office to come with solutions to the problem. This might not seem like a major problem, but to the Ulster Aviation Society, they can't even advertise their museum because of the restrictions that are in the very, very temporary lease that they have. What we have coming forward is a presentation on perhaps a more strategic way forward from the SIB. I don't really know what way to move forward on this, because I think that in the first instance, if members were happy that we could write that letter regarding the Ulster Aviation Society, but with the broader context of resolving, coming with solutions to resolve the main issue of the entire site development. Would members be happy for us to do that in this first instance?
Chair, as long as we don't link the two.
Chair, just on the question of the Aviation Society and their being prohibited from advertising, I picked that up the day we were out there, but I don't quite understand why they can't advertise. It's not the Balmoral Show advertises, Econ advertises. I don't really, I'm not too sure about the nature of the prohibition, which means that they can't advertise open days or whatever it is they want to have.
There is just some stipulation in their lease, which doesn't really make much sense.
Yeah.
But it's been there, and they have the Development Corporation has written several times to the Executive Office, and they're not getting any responses around it. So if they're locked into that in the original lease, that's you know that's limiting their ability. So then perhaps we write two letters. The other issue that was brought up as well, and I suppose this is rather, it's not that contentious, it's about writing to the joint First Ministers and to the Minister of Infrastructure to consider bringing forward plans for the link road to the site. The link road to the site requires development anyway, in order for us to open access to the development and investment opportunities to the site. So I think that we could make those asks and not have any of them connected to the other, and we'll see what response we get from the departments, if everybody's okay with that.
Chair, could I come in there just?
Yeah, Pat.
I mean, I think, and I stand corrected if I'm wrong, I think there was an estimate of £30 million for that link road, and I see little point investing £30 million when we don't have any notion of whether the overall development of the site is going to go ahead or not. It seems a bit like putting the cart before the horse. I think we need to get agreement around the development of the site. We had it before. Internal difficulties within the DUP prevented it from going ahead. And I appreciate there still are internal difficulties there, but you know, the DUP need to get over themselves, and let's get this site developed. It's a multi-million, if not billion-pound opportunity there for all of us. So you know, and I say to the DUP, in all sincerity, I mean, let's get this done. Let's go back to the agreement we had that you reneged on, and let's get this site developed.
It's extremely short-sighted to have something of this magnitude, you know, in the corridor between Dublin and Belfast, and not to be investing heavily on it. And we do need solutions for it. Anyway, okay, that's fine.
Chair, just on the link road, I mean, are we going to write and ask them to bring forward plans for the development of a link road to a road that doesn't exist?
But
the Knockmore Link Road hasn't started, you know. My understanding is that's Link Road.
But what we need to do is get a response from the joint ministers to kind of move this forward. We know what the response is going to be, Pat, that there is going to be no movement, but we need to find ways to then have further engagement, and hopefully then sequential to this here, the meeting with SIB. But certainly it's an investment opportunity that I would say, you know, if it was in my constituency, that it would be a shocking dereliction of duty of all political parties and all persuasions. Shocking.
Chair, since you mentioned my constituency, I couldn't agree more. It's been an absolute disaster since 2013. Places, there's progress being made on the site in terms of maintenance and a small amount of development, but the historic part of it is going to rack and ruin. Can't get agreement even about allowing a commercial, well, a voluntary operation on the site to advertise. That's absolutely ridiculous. And you can, the day we were out there, you could sense the frustration in Terence Brannigan and his team, and small wonder. 8 years of inactivity, and who's to blame? I don't need to say. It's just crazy stuff. It's typical of this place. It's typical of the executive office. This sort of nonsense continues to happen.
Yeah, Chair, I not to rehash anything that has already been said. Obviously, I wasn't at last week's meeting when the initial conversation about this was held, as I was off sick. But I suppose being on the site that day, and I think you made the point even in the conversation that we had following the presentation. I mean, the obvious draw on that site is the prison and the prison story, and it's something we're not talking about, you know, one visitor site or attraction that would be, you know, attractive to people in the north. This is a Giant's Causeway. This is a Cliffs of Moher sort of situation in terms of the international draw that it would have, and it is such a waste and such a disappointment that same denial and blockage from the DUP that we've seen in terms of the Bill of Rights, we've seen in Gaelic, we've seen in the FICT report recommendations, and it's the same on this, and it's just frustrating. And I think it's important that that's called out if we're to force movement here.
Right, I'm going to try again. So if we don't write about the link road, then will we just do a direct letter to the First and Deputy First Minister and ask what resolution can be found with regard to the prison site? Just be very direct in that, or is that, you know, this is like this is the elephant in the room here. You know, we need to get it resolved in order to move on and unleash the potential. And this site has potential for the whole of Northern Ireland. It's a massive strategic investment opportunity that will enhance the economy of Northern Ireland because of its logistical and geographical location at the point of two major trading areas. Let's try and move it on.
Chair, can I come in?
Yes, certainly, Diane.
Thank you. So first of all, I think we've come round in a full circle, but just to get away from the nonsense that somehow or other the prison cell where people starve themselves to death is equivalent to the Cliffs of Moher or the Giant's Causeway, is be seen for the ridiculous nonsense that it actually is. We all know that to do anything with the bigger development will require some kind of political agreement. But in the meantime, the Ulster Aviation Society are caught in the middle of all of this. Now, what we can do and what we should do and what we should do to do the right thing by the Ulster Aviation Society is to release them and allow them to develop the aviation museum on the site, which already has had considerable development, but is hampered and constricted by not being able to have visitors, have open days, you know, short-term funding, etc., etc. I mean, this seems a very simple thing that we could progress today, but is being held back in order to try to get agreement where Pat Sheehan knows there won't be agreement on this particular issue.
Chair, could I comment on that? If there won't be agreement on that particular issue, there won't be agreement about the whole site. Nothing can progress here unless we have agreement around the prison and the future of it and how it's portrayed.
Why?
I'm not at
Why?
that. I'm not talking to you. Hold on a minute. I agree with your proposal that we should write directly to the First and Deputy First Minister and ask them what's going to happen about the prison, because that's the elephant in the room. But don't forget, the Mays Long Cash Development Corporation have made a sensible suggestion too, that they could perhaps take over that project and try and get the politicians out of it. Because we could be sitting here, well, I won't be in 10 years' time having the same discussion unless that's resolved.
Sure, can I come in there, please?
Yes.
First of all, the reason we're in this situation at the minute is because the DUP reneged on the deal that they originally made. That's the first thing. Secondly, I find Diane's comments and the tone of her comments gratuitously offensive. Some of the people who died in the H blocks in Long Cash were friends of mine, and maybe she might like to consider that. Thank you.
Okay. I really don't. As a chair here, I'm sitting trying to seek agreement, and I've got everybody that speaks, I've got a different consensus. So I'm nearly going to have to ask for a hands up in relation to the first proposal on the table in relation to writing to the department to ask that the lease agreement with the Ulster Aviation Society be changed as follows and as listed, that renewed every 3 years instead of every 6 months, and allow the society to advertise. These are two clauses in their current leasing agreement that they can't progress any further because of the restrictions. Are members happy for us to write to the First and Deputy First Minister to make that proposal?
Yes.
Pat, Emma, I'm happy to do that, in that particular instance. Now, the response will be all revealing, I suppose, and because we ask for the First Ministers to do something, it doesn't mean to say that they do it. But are you happy for us to proceed with that? I would say the other areas at this particular point in time are much more difficult.
Well, Chair, sorry, John, go ahead.
No, go ahead, sorry.
Sorry, I thought there was someone else speaking there. I would be more inclined to ask the Executive Office why the particular conditions on the lease are there and get some information and ask if it is possible for those conditions to be eased or relaxed. I think we need to know why they're there in the first place. Yeah, thanks.
Okay. We will do that because ultimately it'll have the same response. So I'm happy enough to put a letter from the committee through to the Executive Office. And I suppose on the final area there where there was a proposal that the site be transferred to MLKDC board, I myself wouldn't really be in favour of that at this particular point in time. I believe that we need a briefing from SIB in order to understand just the nature of the site and the governance in and around that. As I say, it's a major site, and the board itself, the MLK board, is depleted at the minute. And there would be an awful lot of investment required for them to even be able to take something of this magnitude on. As I say, it has a wider implications than just the site itself. So I'd like to hear more on that. So I think that's all we can progress at this particular point in time.
Jared, you did suggest we should write a letter quite direct to OFM, DFM about the future of the prison. And I still think that's a good idea. But you could include in that they have they had sight of, or are they even considering the offer from the Maize Development Corporation, that they might have some input into that?
Okay, happy enough. Everybody happy enough there then? Okay, that's fine. Well, that was easy. Okay. Can I update members that the clerk has prepared a list of proposed invitees for stakeholder groups to give views on the violence against women and girls strategy, and it's which is taking place on the 26th of January 2022 in page 3 of the table pack.
Chair, can I just...
Oh, right, okay, Emma, sorry. Did I miss you?
Sorry, I was cutting in and out there, and I wasn't sure if you had moved on or you were going to open. It was merely just to say I agree with all the sectoral groups that have been listed there, but I actually was thinking maybe we could broaden it out and include the likes of Raise Your Voice, the Children's Commissioner. I know I had participated in an event last night with QUB Feminist Society, and they had suggested that they would like to have input into the strategy, and perhaps presenting to the committee might be an idea. I don't know if it's feasible to have all of those sorts of groups included, but just to broaden it out in terms even of the intersectionality, to have migrants groups and some of the other sectoral organisations included.
Yeah, I think so. I know that a couple that you've mentioned is in the group in the table documents, probably not in the first list, but in the table documents. So yeah, and I do think that stakeholder engagement is really, really worthwhile, and I suppose it's more valuable that we're doing it now before the strategy rather than afterwards, so that we have a good idea just what the stakeholder groups, what they believe that their contribution and what they believe should be in the actual strategy itself. So I think that will be a positive engagement. Okay, item number 7, the Forward Work Programme. Refer members to pages 102 to 110 of the meeting pack for the Forward Work Programme. Are members content?
Yeah.
Correspondence. Members, there are 19 items of correspondence, pages 111 to 394 in the meeting pack. I'll go through them, because just 8.1, if anybody wants to comment in any of these areas, just if you could raise your hand and let me know. 8.1, the statement from Lord Frost following his meeting with Marcus Shechkovich, the word I can't say, on the 3rd of December. 8.2 is a joint reply from the House of Lords European Union Committee and devolved administrations on the PPA. 8.3, UK Government Statement, joint communique from the British-Irish Intergovernmental Conference. We're having an awful lot of EU correspondence at the minute. So 8.4, First Minister and Deputy First Minister's response queries to the interim head of civil service, and we've dealt with that matter. 8.5, First Minister and Deputy First Minister response and request for minutes of the executive meetings. You'll not be shocked to learn the answer was no. 8.6, the Executive Office response queries following Permanent Secretary oral briefing, and there was a number of queries that were raised that the Permanent Secretary said that he would get back to us. And with regard to the mother and babies homes or institutions, as I suppose we should call them, because I've been told, you know, by those in the institutions that they weren't homes at all. I note that there is going to be fast progress creating a statutory requirement to retain records. I would like some clarification just on how that statutory requirement will be put in place quickly. I know it's through the bill going through the Justice Office, but I would really like some more further information, just how that, how speedy that can be based on the shortness of this current mandate. The other areas, 8.7, the Executive Office response to the review of HIA, the redress board and the timeline apology. Can I seek members' agreement to write to the First and Deputy First Minister to ask for a copy of the terms of reference for the review? And the review of the redress process is separate to considerations for an apology, and the two should not in any way impact each other. If members are happy for us to write to the Executive Office on that. Yep. 8.8, First Minister and Deputy First Minister, the publication of the FIC Commission, and can I remind members that the co-chairs are going to brief the committee now on the 2nd of February. I've also asked the clerk if there was a possibility that the junior ministers might address it when they come to the committee on the 12th of January as well. So 8.9, the executive news release on the FIC report, and 8.10, Executive Office press release regarding the current COVID-19 situation, and 8.11, the committee for the economy response for the future support of travel agents. 8.12 was the Committee for Education, a fair start report, and 8.13 was the Northern Ireland Public Services Ombudsman Report 2020 to 2021, and 8.14 was Seenoi-Barr Investing Activity Report for November. 8.15 was the Welsh Parliament response to Legislation, Justice and Constitution Committee from the Commons Frameworks. 8.16, the Welsh Parliament to House of Lords Common Framework Scrutiny Committee. And 8.17, the Rosetta Trust follow-up meeting with the Chair and the Executive Office Committee. The Commissioner for Survivors of the Historical Childhood Abuse is coming before the committee next week, so that's we'll hear more from them. 8.18 is the Association of Northern Ireland Travel Agents, and again it's a follow-up to the stakeholder session on the 10th of November. And finally, 8.19, Clerking and Member Support Office, Member Development, Deaf Awareness Course. So are members content to note the rest of the correspondence? Okay.
Yep.
Any?
Just to say to mention the motion on the 18th of January.
Oh, sorry. That's
writing. It's in the tabled papers.
All right, okay. Members, just to let you know that on the 18th, is the 18th of January, there will be a motion laid before the Assembly in relation to our briefing last week for the Public Services, what is it? What is it again? Public Services Ombudsman. It's just the 7 principles. Okay. Have any members any other business that they would wish to raise? No. Okay. The date, time, and place of next meeting will be next Wednesday, the 15th of December at 2 p.m. in room 30. Thank you very much. Good evening.
Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Bye bye.
This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the Northern Ireland Assembly Committee Room 30. This is the